Hey dudes and dudettes, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to another video. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be walking you guys through the importance of slimline cards and how to really maximize your design to that longer layout of the slimline cards. That longer format can make for some really awesome card designs and use that space to really maximize your creativity. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. This is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock, and I'm going to cut it first off horizontally, and I'm going to cut it to 8 5/8. And I'm using my Tonic Studios trimmer. This is one of my faves because it cuts perfectly for me every time. And then I'm going to cut it to 7 2/8. So I'm going to go here. So I'm going to take this with my Teflon bone folder, and I'm going to score at 3 5/8. It's right next to the 4-bar mark. And I'm just going to go in here and score this down, and then I'll flip my card to ensure that I'm going to get it all the way down, because this is a very tall card. Now I'll flip my cardstock and score it down. So that creates the base itself. And so that creates a really nice slimline card. Alright, so to start on our slimline cards, I'm using the Doodle floral stamp set first. And this is a layering set from my line that has solid images and then some doodled flowers. And for this design, I'm going to take some of the outlined flowers first and kind of create a little bit of a border. I wanted to cover one side of the card and go a little bit kind of towards the center here. So I'm taking some of the larger flowers, putting them at the edge, and then I'm taking some flowers that kind of can go along the side of the card and frame it out a little bit. And this is going to create a frame for one side of the card, and since we're using the MISTI stamping tool, it's going to kind of fill both sides, and I'll show you a really easy way to do that. So I'm going to pick up these images in my stamping tool and then start my stamping. And this is another reason why we use the MISTI, because I had to stamp it twice in the exact same spot because I messed up the first time. So I'll ink it up in some jet black Archival ink and stamp it down. Now then all I'm going to do is take out my magnet, rotate and turn my sheet of cardstock, and then I can stamp it down again. And this really takes advantage of the slimline card design because you're able to just kind of fill out both sides and still have room in the center for your sentiment. And also it's a huge time saver, and instead of having to stamp those individually or line them up on both sides to create a border. Then I'm doing this another one too because I figured, well, hey, since we've got everything out and lined up, why not make two of the same slimline card? So it's also a great way to create several cards at once and make a set. Alright, so since this has solid images in it too, it's really easy to color in the images quickly. So I took 3 of those flower images and I'm going to stamp them down using all the same color. I'm starting off with a little bit of piggyback ink from my line, and I'm going to stamp that down, and again, you could do it however many times. The more you stamp it, the darker it's going to get. Then all I have to do, again, is just rotate the cardstock. Those are still lined up in the exact same spot, and then I can keep going. So it's a huge time saver. Now I'm going in with a little bit of rosy cheeks, and I'm just going to kind of roll that onto the edge of the stamps. This is just adding a little bit of shading, and I'll do the same thing with bee sting here. It'll add some shading to the image, even though it's just one solid stamp. It's a super easy way to color it in, and you can decide however much shading you want to add to it. Now, for the next couple flowers, I took the first ones off, then lined up the next 2 flowers, and I'm going to stamp these down in orange. I like that you could do it in different groups like this, so that I can stamp them down in all different colors if I wanted to. And then, once again, all you got to do is flip and rotate the cardstock and stamp it again, and it's perfectly lined up. I'll do the same thing, adding some shading using traffic cone, but again, like I said, you can always just leave them solid and one color if you want to. I lined up some of the leaves and I'm going to stamp them down using Tropical Tango, and then once again, I'm going to take those out, put in the next leaves, and then these I'm going to stamp down using a little bit of Psych, and then I'm going to do a little bit of shading on my second layer with a little bit of Later Gator. And I'm just going to kind of roll that on with the edge of my ink pad and stamp it down. Now, I wanted to also show you another way you could do this. So after I've stamped that down, I'm going to share after I've rotated it. So here I'm just going to put Psych down, and then I'm going to put Latergator down right on top of it. This works really well. All you have to do is roll it on there and stamp it down. It's not going to contaminate your ink pads. You're starting from a lighter color to a darker color, so you are totally fine with that. Then after about 10 minutes, I've got them all stamped down and ready to go, and I can continue on with the rest of my card. I'm going to use a sentiment from the Encouraging Words stamp set, and I like to take the stamp set and kind of move around the acetate to find the one that's going to fit the best. I decided to go with the sentiment, You Make Me Smile, and again, I'm going to stamp it down on my MISTI, because you never know, I don't want to mess up right at the end. Now to finish this off, I wanted to get rid of a little bit of that white space, so I'm going around the edges with an ink blending tool and a little bit of the Clear Skies ink, just to add a little bit of color and interest to the edges. Then I wanted to add a little bit of texture too, so I'm going in with the Nothing But Net stencil, and I'm just going to really lightly go right over top of that ink with the same Clear Skies color. Now less is more with this. You won't be able to tell when you're going through your stencil, but you're just creating this nice subtle texture in your color. Now it's a 6x6 stencil, so all I need to do is move and shift it down my card, line it up with some of the white space, it doesn't need to be perfect, and then keep going with it. And I'll link up to a video in the top right corner where I showed how to maximize and stretch your 6x6 stamps and stencils for Slimline cards. Now I love how these two turned out. That time-saving tip of rotating your cardstock and creating that beautiful mirrored frame is so much fun to take advantage of this Slimline design. Now for the next Slimline card, I'm using the Flower Picking Friends stamp set, and I gotta say, this is something I've wanted to do for quite some time. Now these are some large florals in this stamp set, but I've always wanted to fit them on the same card, and with Slimline cards, you totally can, because you have a ton of space to work with. Now I love that you can fit the Slimline card in the MISTI because this has been a game changer because there's so much area to stamp that this really makes it nice and easy to do. And I'm inking up the images with a little bit of jet black archival, and it's kind of funny, how do you guys press down your MISTI? I just use my fingers, but some people use a cloth or a sleeve to do it too, but I just use my fingers to press down the weight and get a nice stamped image. Now to color these images in, I'm just using some of my Simon Hurley Create inks that I've smooshed down onto my craft sheet and picking up with a little bit of water and a brush to do some watercoloring. Now I'll link up in the top right corner to a video where I shared tons of tips on how to watercolor with your inks, but I'll walk you through the process again in this video here. So I like to take a paintbrush to get a lot of control rather than using a water brush, and I'll go into my inks with quite a bit of water for the first wash of color. After I'm done, you can kind of see that first wash of color is a little bit light. You could totally leave it there if you want to, but I usually like to go in with a second color or that color and just a little bit more concentrated with less water, and just go into where I want to add any shading. In the flowers, it's usually the center of the flowers or where the petals kind of meet the center to add a little bit of shading there. Then for the leaves here, I'm going in with that really bright green. I prefer a bright green, and then I usually go in with like Tropical Tango to calm it down and create a beautiful blend in the end. Here you'll see that same thing going in with a wash of color. I never use too much water because I don't like the kind of uncontrollable experience of that. So I just use a little bit of water to get some nice blending into there. Now for the background, I always like to go in with a really light and subtle color. Here I went in with a really watered down version of Minty Fresh, which is kind of like a grayish minty neutral, but I really like the look that it gives the background. It's just enough color and interest and detail to, make it a little bit less stark white, and I love how that looks. When I'm holding it up here, you could totally see that minty fresh background, and I love how these flowers fit on there perfectly to create this beautiful and stunning watercolor card. Alright, so this last card is definitely a bonus card. I'm going to take all of those inks that you saw me kind of smoosh down earlier to create that watercolor, and I'm just going to take strips of cardstock and start kind of tapping them in to do an ink smooshed background here. When I'm doing this, I never really press super hard into the background. Some people ask how I get the effects that I do, and it's usually because I really lightly tap my cardstock into the inks to get a little bit of color and texture. I find it gives a more variated effect rather than just a stamped impression of where the ink pad was. Now I'm going to take my heat tool, dry it in between layers, and then I'll again lightly tap it into the excess ink. By drying it in between the layer and tapping it again, you'll get a little bit more texture and splotches of color without them blending into the already wet background. So once I'm done doing these strips of cardstock to create my background, I'm then going to cut them down into 3 different sections that will fit onto my Slimline card. And then I'm going to create a scene on each 3 of them. So I'm using the Gnome Party stamp set from my new fall release and stamping it down just in jet black archival ink. I stamped down the gnome house, the 2 little gnomes, and then I stamped down some snails, mushrooms, and then a sentiment that says, "There's gnome one like you." I wasn't going to share this one, but my mom said that it was cool because you can kind of take different images and create little scenes on each one of them with using these kind of rectangles or circles to create the scenes. And I love the colorful background that I created too with some of the excess ink. Alright, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a big thumbs up and be sure to leave a comment down below which Slimline card was your favorite from today's video. I would love to chat with you guys down there. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, be sure to click that subscribe button down below so you never miss another video from me. And also, I have a phone number as well, so be sure to text the number on the screen if you want more updates, sales info, and different deals and sales, and if you want to chat one-on-one as well. Alright guys, I'll see you very, very soon for another card making and crafting video. Have a great day. Bye!